if you can have chunks of burl, look, this type of form looks real pretty in burl wood. I had one at a show I did in St. Louis last year. It's a couple of research botanists at the Botanical Gardens and been regular customers of mine. And I told them, I said, you know, I have to charge a lot for this because it took a long time to get everything out. Now, I actually had them convinced, but as you will see, there's really nothing new in what I'm doing today. It's more of a sort of an arrangement of steps and a strategy to how to get these things done. And I made 30 of these things. I'm afraid we have more than 30 people here. If you don't get one, if you can, you know, look on with the guy next to you for now so everybody has a chance at it. If we run out and you don't get one, give me your name and your email and I'll email you one. Okay. I do almost all my work with bowl gouges. You could do this with a spindle gouge. Probably do a lot of it with a skew if you want to do that. This is just the type of tool I do most of my work with, and it's what I'm most comfortable with. This thing was turned to a cylinder on my lathe at home, and it is a tad off center here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get that little wobble out of it, and then we'll go, and I will move along, keeping in sync, I hope, with the handout. The reason that the handout happened is I wanted to do another one after I had so much fun with my St. Louis customers using this strategy. But when I did that, I was back, I don't want to put this in. So I went ahead and did it, and I took pictures as I was going along. And that's page 2 and 3 of the handout.
What kind of wood is that?
This is cherry. And it's dry. You're going to do a glue up as part of this thing. So you want wood, I think, that's fairly dry, unless it's mesquite. Mesquite is wonderful unless you get away with anything. But if you have a real wet wood and try to do one of this, I think you might have some problems with movement, lose your bottom or something like that. Okay, that's all I need to do on that. I know I should be, if I'm doing anything heavy duty, I'll come back and put that on, but it is difficult to talk with one of those things. Yeah. The first thing I'm going to do is to look at photo 1 is I'm going to work the two ends. What's now at the headstock will be the top of the vase, and this is going to be the bottom of the vase. And I'm not trying to match that thing exactly. I'm trying to show you a strategy.
We can't see.
You're standing
Everybody who has a chuck should have something like this. This is how small you can go and still grab the sucker and keep you from being embarrassed. This is the size you need to make it to operate in the expansion mode. And actually this one is very versatile because I've got a thing here for the expansion mode in my bigger Bic Mark. I use Bic Mark chucks. I like them. The stronghold, like we have on the club lathe, is also a very good thing. Supernova is good. They all work. I am not known for neatness and loose things, and a Bic Mark operates with a standard metric like X key. Whoops. And you can find these at most hardware stores. If you lose the other thing and they get swept out with shadings, you end up probably going back to the manufacturer. You're not going to find one of those things in a hardware store. Not in any hardware stores I know. Big Mark and I have a little bit of the dovetail paper. And then this is a technical operation known as getting wood out of the way. And at the end here, this is going to end up being the jam chuck. So I'm just making myself a little space. Okay, the other end, I'm going to have this. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Okay, that's just a peeling cut. You kind of come in at a little bit of an angle and then push down and push forward. And it's a pretty efficient way to remove wood, get wood out of your way. You can do it with a skew. Of course, you're holding it at a little bit of an angle. And the surface is not the best, but it's adequate for what we're going to be doing here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And that's just to help me along with the design as I go, because I know the one thing I didn't do when I was taking all these pictures was hold a ruler next to things, see where I was. So if you look now at photo 2 on your handout, this is where I am down here. That's going to become the bottom. Photo 1 shows you just a straight on view of the two of them. And I'll take a parting tool next, and come in right against, this is going to be the bottom of the vase, so come in down the set. Okay. I'm going to be drilling a 1-inch hole in there, so I want to make sure I leave a little more than an inch. And you always have to forget something. I forgot my calipers, but that's more than an inch. So. And a parting tool is not the instinctive thing that most beginning turners want to do with a parting tool is want to grab it and just push straight in. Wrong. You go ahead and it's a bevel rubbing cut. Let's start the bevel and then twist and then lift up and push down, push forward. Don't go straight in. It'll cut that way, but it'll leave you a very ragged surface. This is, actually, if you can see, I don't know how good the camera shows, but that's at least as good a surface as that right there. And, okay. So we're now complete through photo 3, excuse me, and we'll be going, if you look at photo 4, I'm going to go ahead and start developing the shape of the vase. Is this all the way down? For the peeling cut and the parting cut, I wanted the tool rest up pretty close to center. The way I work now is with the gouges, I usually have the tool rest lower. This is a 3/8 inch roll gouge. If you will notice, I'm doing this with my whole body, not with just my hand. And if you'll notice, this is falling off. And I think that gives me a little smoother cut, better control. This tool is ground to a 45-degree angle, and it's, okay, ground at 45 degrees. It's a swept back fingernail type grind. It was ground on a 60 grit wheel. It is not honed. I don't hone bowl gouges as a matter of course. Excuse me.
So if someone didn't understand why you were using a 45 instead of, say, a 60 degree,
Good question, thanks, Les. 45 is a more aggressive grind, and you get wood out of your way faster, and we're at the getting wood out of the way stage at this point. The disadvantage of a 45 is that on an open bowl, if you try to sweep through, you won't. And you'll probably either catch or lose control or something like that. Unless you're one of these guys who can cut on the back of the bevel. And it's fun to try. But a 60 will go through and it's a lot safer. So I keep my 3 primary bowl gouges, a 5/8, a 3/8, and a 1/4 at 45, and then I've got a 1/2 inch at 60, and that's what I finish the inside of a bowl with. If you only want to spend money for one bowl gouge, grind it at 60. Because you can do this with 60, it'll just take a little longer. Okay. And that's, this leaves a reasonably good surface.
How fast are
1149.6. I'm sorry, repeat. Now, I don't want to go very far at this point because I want to leave plenty of meat up here for support while I'm doing the hollowing. I will be hollowing from the bottom. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. This is just a negative rake scraper. It was actually originally a tool like, one I didn't bring. One of these things that are in the craft supplies catalog where it has a little hook at the end, and I finally just wore that down. Craft Supply says their tools are designed by Dalmatians. They probably were, but Lula in Sweden was selling that one probably back in the 1980s. It was very similar. So I've just ground that down, and I keep that because they use it as a negative rate scraper. Which Richard Raffin, who's probably the best guy with using scrapers I've ever seen, says you don't really need the negative rate, but he's in Australia, so everything's upside down.
Broke it, he can stand there and hold it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
It's plenty of You're getting seafood.
Okay, that's a little rough there, but that would come out with sanding or a little bit of additional shear scraping. So I'm going to go ahead now. Wait a minute, let me not get ahead of myself here. Yeah, actually what I'm going to do before I pull this off is I'm going to go ahead and part this through to get my hole. And oops. I don't think that's going to get started. Okay. What I would normally do with parting through on something like that is go down to maybe 1/4 of an inch or so and then use a coping saw to cut the last little bit off. But now I found out there are two things I forgot. The coping saw was the second one. Okay. So where we are now is somewhere between photo 5 and photo 6. And if you're fairly new and haven't overstocked your shop yet, this kind of step center, drive centers are really good. They're a whole lot better than 4-prong or 2-prong in my opinion. Well worth the money.
Kip,
Yes, sir.
for new people, and I know this is opinionated, Jimmy Clues, which is a pretty good turn, says he has found the $20 one at PSI in their catalog. It works for him as well as the $60 actual step center. So we're going to save a little money.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to pay a little more, if you've got an old dead center, just use an old pointer dead center. Cup center.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. Works. Okay.
Michael Hosler uses that for almost all his twin center work.
Yeah, actually those started, I think, with Del Stubbs as a real safe way of doing things, because if you have a catch, they'll slip. And, yeah. Hosler's a lot of fun to take a class from, isn't he?
talking about, a dead center for your the tail center?
The
It's
dead
up
tail,
center that she used to put grease in.
yeah, the old kind, the kind that came, when you bought a lathe in 1985, the kind that came for the tail center.
Well, that's what I had originally in my lathe that I got was a dead center.
Mm-hmm.
And you just take that, put it in the head?
Well, you kind of grind it down to a shape you want to hold it, and use that as a drive center.
And if you want to use your state grinder, put the top in about with the drive, it doesn't, it's not necessary.
I just found
Say, hey, one more thing,
That's kind of out of the way here. Looks good. Oh yeah, yeah, I'd rather be lucky than good anytime. Okay, with Forstner bits, you're rubbing quite a bit of metal surface against the wood, and you need to slow down. I usually try to do it at around 300 RPM. This is going to 330 right now. And
We see smoke.
yeah. Back out frequently to keep the shavings coming out. That'll help some. If you're buying Forstner bits and the store you're in has some brand and then they have Freud Diablo, the Diablo will cost twice as much, and in my opinion, it's worth every cent of it. This is really good steel in these things. Or real good metallurgy, I don't know, I assume some kind of stainless steel.
I've purchased a few carbide Forstner bits.
Oh, like from Grizzly?
Huh?
Like from Grizzly?
No, I bought mine up at American Sharpening,
Okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
and you don't go buy a whole set, 'cause it takes a lot of money.
Yeah.
But you buy one once in a while as you need it, you end up with it, but they don't cut as clean as a good steel bit, but they sharp for a long, long time.
Yeah, Grizzly's got them fairly cheap, and, you know, if you just want to, you know, get wood out of the way and, you know, tolerate a little raggedness, they're pretty good. I'm going to see if I can get this a little further, make life easier at the next step.
And you get a steel Forstner bit if you want to sharpen it. Just get on YouTube and look up sharpen Forstner bits and you'll find it. Everything you need to know is just sharpen them real quick.
Now, Now, before you move that closer like that, should you turn that tailstock back a little bit, so you have a longer reach with it?
Well, I got plenty left.
Okay.
I'm only out 1 inch.
Okay.
So, yeah, you got a good point.
Kip, are you going all the way through?
No. Who let the canary in here?
Kip mentioned about clearing those chips out, and the result of not clearing the chips out is that you pull the piece out of the jaws of the chuck, or you pull the drill chuck out of the tailstock. But it will get stuck.
It'll be stuck.
Don't ask me how.
Curtis found out, most of us have found out the hard way, I guess. Experience. Okay, so now we're at photo 6 right now. So we'll flip go into the hollowing, and I'm going to take the tailstock off to do this. The lathe, I've got a short bed lathe at home, and so I'm used to kind of standing down at the end, and I probably don't really need to take the tailstock off to get in here with this one, but
It'll slide down.
Yeah, you can move the headstock,
That
Kip.
headstock, slide,
oh yeah, that's all
down.
right. That's all right.
Want to do that?
No, no. We'd only have to do it back later. Okay, now when you're on the inside of something, I say on the notes in there to make a mark where, so you'll know how deep the hole is. Actually, I've got a nice mark here that's built into the wood, so I don't need to do that for this one, but you want to set your tool rest so that you're slightly above center when you're making your cut. This is a tool that Guy Brawler makes. This is carbide cutter on here. For hollowing out where you don't have to go in an extreme angle and don't need a crook, these things work great. Sorby's got some kind of cutter that'll do it too, but Guy pays more for product placement, so. We'll use this. I'm gonna go back up in speed. You wanna make sure you don't screw up the surface here because that's gonna be a glue joint. It's important when you're howling to stop fairly frequently and dig out the shavings. If you don't, it leads to rather spectacular catches on your howling tools. Yes, Bob?
When you use your mask,
Huh?
when you use your face shield.
When I don't have to talk while I'm working. Yeah, I'm kind of out of the line of fire here. You notice though, when I was parting off, I went over and put it back on. I'm not really worried. I'll be careful. I used to tell people that you could not knock a piece out of a Big Mark chuck that you could, disalign it, but you could then knock it out. Then I found out if you work hard enough at it, you can. If you had, had a compressor, you could blow this out. That works good.
And Kip, all this time, we thought we were cutting it through that little neck at the top.
That's what makes this fun.
Yeah. Then do you cut that?
The one that,
Right here.
oh, okay, that's around, I think that's around 1/4 inch. I probably won't go that far today because, watching me do the same thing over and over again. And how am I doing on time, by the way? Okay. So, we're not really pressed yet. But I'm not trying to make a finished piece, I'm trying to go through the sequence. And like I said at the start, there's nothing really new here. I haven't shown you anything that you haven't seen before. It's just the sequence to line it up and the strategy. That's what I'm trying to communicate across to you.
So that titanium elbow's working pretty well, huh?
The titanium elbow works really well. For those of you who haven't been around for a while, a couple of years ago, on a hazardous duty mission, delivering Christmas cookies to neighbors, I took a fall, smashed my right elbow, and it's now got a nice titanium ball in there. And, if you ever need a hand or arm surgeon, call me up, I'll tell you who to go to, because the guy was great. Okay, that's getting down.
Tell you, I am so glad to see that you're getting catches and
Oh, yeah.
vibration and everything in there. I thought I was doing something wrong, because every time I put my tool in the hollow, try and hollow it out, I was getting so many catches, I couldn't believe it. Made me want to quit.
Well, some woods are catchier than others. If you have a coarse grain wood, you're much more prone to catch it when you're hollowing out, is one thing I've noticed, at least for me. I may be running this a little on the slow side, it's around 1550. Dry wood is worse than wet wood. John Jordan, I heard make the statement once, if I had to turn dry wood, I'd quit. I don't know if he still feels that way or not, that was a long time ago. I'm going to, let's see, maybe I can just do it with this. I would like to go up a little deeper in here than I can get with a Forstner. Let's see if I can just do it by pushing this in. If not, Oh, I don't need to do that. This is just a more shaper drill bit, some real oddball size. I actually won this at a club meeting. Jerry Brownrigg, who was Bill Cook's professor in college, was our demonstrator, and he donated this. I'm going to go in another probably 3/4 of an inch. Let's see if I set that down. It's a good idea when you're hollowing, if you've had a couple of small caches or something like that, to, check your chuck in, make sure it's staying tight.
Hey Jim, that handle is shrinking there, you can't see.
Did you just drill all the way through us?
No, I'm about up to here. No, I will drill a hole in the mouth of the vase from the other end. Although I could take, the 3/8 inch drill and run it all the way through from here if I wanted to. Hadn't really thought about that, but you can do that way.
You'd probably have better luck centering the hole going through from the top.
Yeah, it'll be where I want it, whether it wants to be or not.
Why did you drill out some more on that?
Because the Forstner that I've got is a fairly short shank, and it came to about here. And having a little more hole to work with as a center, it's easier to hollow out up into this region and here. That way the piece won't hopefully have a top-heavy feel to it.
So for anybody who may have fallen asleep for a little while, you're actually.
Am I that bad?
You're actually, I just got what you're doing. So that's the bottom, and you're gonna put a wooden trunk back in there. I missed something.
Most people aren't that slow.
Look at here.
I know.
No,
Don't know why.
you can read ahead, it's not cheating.
I totally missed it.
Let it have done with
I don't know what I got. I think I know what I'm getting.
And we want to make sure it's real smooth in there.
That's one of the nice things about a 3/8 inch hole.
Yeah,
Nobody's not gonna know it, isn't it? But you could, after you go through the hollowing, you could go back with a side scraper, preferably a flat shaft. And that's a lot better for smoothing than a round shaft. And do that.
Kip, are you trying to keep your cutter at any angle, or are you just going in straight?
Going in pretty straight. I I probably should have it a little more angle than I've got it. But I actually got way too much buildup in there, that's why they caught that badly.
Yeah, you got it loose now here.
Yeah, okay, I've gone far enough, I believe. Yeah, I'm about right here. And that's gonna come down, and that's a little thicker here than it is here, I think. But when I shape this and round it off more, that will bring it back into nominally equal wall thickness. With dry wood, you don't have to worry about unequal wall thickness near as much as you do with wet wood. Let's see.
When you take a piece out of your chuck that you got there, should you put the wood back in the chuck in the same jaw that it was? I mean, can you twist the wood?
You're really better off putting it back in the chuck. What I will often do, and I just flat forgot today, is between jaw 1 and jaw 2, I'll take a little magic marker and put there, so if I do have to take the thing completely off, it will go back in the way it was.
Okay.
And that's all based on we think the jaws aren't exactly the same?
Yeah. I think with the Vic mark, I've been pleased. They may not be perfect, but they're awful close.
Yeah.
Okay, that's running good now. Okay. So we are now, I'm still on page 1. If you're following along in the handout,
I am.
okay. I'm going to go back and take this down some more, and then we'll put the plug in here and switch this around. Where's that 3/8? There we go. I probably should have mentioned for the people who are fairly new to this kind of stuff, the grain of this piece of wood that I'm using is running parallel to the lathe bed. So when I'm generating a curve, I want to cut down towards the center because the longer fibers then are always behind the cut and giving it some support. Well, I mean, wood is like a bunch of straws tacked together. And if I'm going downhill this way or that way, the fibers down here are longer than the fiber I'm cutting through. So I'm getting some support. If I try to go the other way, that's going to give me a much rougher surface. Sometimes you have to, just to get the shape you want. And what you do in a case like that, and this is Jimmy Clue's, one of his strategies, is, you know, cut whatever way you want until you get to the end, and then make sure you go with the grain and you come up with a fairly smooth surface. Just getting a little out of the way here. Now, woo, that's coming back up. So it's necessary to show you that. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I may take that down a little more later. We'll see. I want to check my hole here and make sure I didn't gouge anything up that I have to correct for when I go to glue it. We'll now take this out of here.
If I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe it sounds silly, but if all you're gonna put in the top is a 3/8 hole, you can't get your finger in there, see what's inside, why are you bothering to hollow that thing out?
Because, that's a good question. Because if you had that, wherever it is now, had that thing sitting on a table, and you picked it up and it was solid, you'd be really disappointed. Yeah, because, I mean, how a piece feels when you pick it up. Yeah.
Just tell people that I poured some liquid lead in it or something. To give it weight so it
I'll
won't
tell
tip
you.
over.
And the other answer is with just a hole drilled in it, it's called a weed pot.
Yeah. Mhm.
And with an inside in it, it's called a hollow form.
And you can sell it for more?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, weed pots go pretty cheap. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is, this is what I cut off the bottom. And I'm going to go and put this in the chuck and then shave it down to where it fits perfectly, one hopes, into the hole that's in the bottom of the vase.
And would you have normally, I know you're probably not sanding, but here, but what, before you thinned it out, would that be where you did the sanding and of the outside?
No, I never sand outside, or hardly ever sand outside until I'm finished, because that way, you know, like if you're doing a bowl, and you sand the outside down to 600 grit, and turn around and do the inside, and then make a designer funnel. Your grandchildren will learn some new vocabulary about how much time you spend sanding. No. The designer funnel, for anybody who does not know, is that's when you drill, when you're doing a bowl and you make the bottom just too thin.
I did that, thank you. It's my first piece.
We've all done it. We've all done it. And, you know.
Hey Les, just to note, the top is now on your left.
I'll keep you track.
Oh, boy.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a photo session here. I should have brought some. vernier calipers. I'm just gonna take a little rubber off.
Is that a tapered hole?
No,
It's not.
no, it is not. I'm trying to eyeball this with a drill bit.
So you're eyeballing in lieu of a calipers?
Yeah. Yeah. Apologize, appreciate your patience.
One more cut.
You get to a point with vernier calipers or inside outside, that sooner or later you just gotta go keep trying. You get to tolerance is not really measurable, at least not with the quality calipers I have. Kind of like when you're making a split fit box. You get down real close quick, but then finishing it out is the almost. Still almost. Okay.
That was too much.
No? Maybe a hair too much. Okay, so what I'm going to do now on the instruction sheet, page one of this thing, what I really recommend would be 5-minute epoxy, but that takes 20 or 30 minutes to hold. 2-ton epoxy, if you can let it sit and finish it tomorrow, is fine. I expect something like Type Bond would work, although usually those kind of polyacrylics, they recommend that they be clamped, and this is not something you can really conveniently clamp. But, I'm going to just take a little bit more off this ear here to make it easier for me to get to that and work with it later. And then we'll super glue it. And like I say in the handout, if you're in a hurry, super glue and prayer is recommended. I want to thank Les. I was getting ready last night, putting all my stuff together, making a checklist, which obviously wasn't long enough. There's so many things we found that I forgot already. I called Les about some accelerator because I found it was empty.
sent me an email last night because we were belatedly celebrating my birthday, and I thought
Oh.
I might not remember. Mary Ann was driving.
That's good. Okay,
Les turned 70 a couple of weeks ago.
I was 70 once, I just have trouble remembering back that far.
Remembering when it was.
I've not had the pleasure yet. Just figuring out why it's so quiet. Leo's not here.
Oh, junior, seniors, and senior seniors.
Put a little bit.
Tell us he said senior, senior, senior.
Senior,
Oh,
seniors.
junior, senior.
It's getting out of the junior, senior.
Okay, this doesn't really have much showing grain, so as long as I get it close, I'll be all right. If you're working with burl, you want to make sure that you slip the plug in so the grain lines up, or spalt, something like that. Okay.
Good job.
I think the snap was evidence enough that I got a pretty good fit.
Jim.
So, were you not demonstrating, you said you would normally use an epoxy?
5-minute epoxy. Epoxy's nice because it does have some gap filling properties if your hair off, and it doesn't require clamps. So it's a good thing to work with for something like this. But 5-minute, they call it 5-minute epoxy, and that's because after you have it mixed, it has a pot life of 5 minutes. But really, to cure, it takes 45 or something like that. I think they say an hour, but you can get away with less. And but it's a glue that's definitely not prone to failure. It hangs in there pretty good. I'm almost tempted to. What I'm going to do is go ahead and put the tailstock back up here to just hold this in place. I'm not quite sure how fast this super glue is going to want to cure. I find that if I leave this untightened and then bring up a cone center, that I get pretty good luck on lineups. And that's not in the notes, but you might want to write that down because it's a helpful thing to have to remember. Going to switch to a 1/4-inch bowl gouge to get this down a little more.
The tailstock isn't locked in.
Thank you.
No, bring
No, bring the handle down there.
Thank you much. And while I'm giving it a little more time before I stress it to, see if there's a little bit of drop there. Okay, so I am at what I'm calling photo 8 there. The next thing I'm going to do is find this. And decide how big I want the bell of the mouth to be.
Well, it can't make it any bigger than that, man.
No sense taking chances. We are now, if you're following along, somewhere between photo 9, that cut that's shown there is done, and we're ready to drill a hole. Photo 10, I really would prefer a Forstner for this, but if I've got a 3/8 inch Forstner, I couldn't find it. And my shop rivals Les's of neatness.
No, that's my office. My shop is fairly neat.
Okay, my shop rivals Les's office in neatness. Excuse me, sir. Never insult the program chairman, they might make you demonstrate twice.
Really?
Actually, I love it. Let's see. Before I put that in, I'm going to do a little shaping here. Get rid of that little nub. That's where that grain. This was actually a little bit out of round compared to the when I switched it around, but that would sand out. I'm not really worried about it for what we're doing here today. Try this. you want, when you're cutting, the point of the tool to enter not only at center, so, let's see. I was doing most of the turning in the neighborhood of 1,500. And that's probably because the lathe I use at home, the speed I normally work at, works out to be 1,400, which is the top end of the high torque range. And I have slowed this down some to a little under 1,200 now, because it's a little more delicate.
Since you talked a little about Jimmy Clues, is there a reason you don't go as fast as he does?
Yeah, I'm not British.
Full speed.
Well, you know, Clues eats off wood turning. I just try to cover my costs. No, I mean, I turn a lot faster when I'm doing spindles, but whoa. Oops.
Why was that chattering so much?
Hmm?
Why was it chattering so much? Wood vibrating, flexible.
It's getting a little thin.
Yeah.
You can create chatter with that wood. You can create chatter with that wood. I can create better chatter with that way than I can with chatter tool.
No, for you know, the thickness I've got there, I didn't really think that chatter was excessive. Okay. If things, when you get them and things start to chatter, if you play with the speed a little bit, you can probably find a sweet spot where you get rid of all of it. Okay, I'm just gonna.
You might try tightening the chuck a little, Kip, because
Yeah.
it looked like
Looks
the
like
whole,
it moved a
looked
little.
like the whole thing was moving a little on the video here.
Oh, okay.
when it was
I
Chapman's.
wonder if that's the wood slipping.
We'll know in a minute.
It could have also been that thing.
I hope not.
Could have been that flexing, just a little hit,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't show us up.
I'm just getting that sharp edge out of there. Okay. Okay. Could have been better. Okay, now, I said these look good in Burl. I assure you that if I was doing one in Burl, I wouldn't be using this for the jam chuck. Get some scrap to do that with, save this for a box inlay or something. But good ways to go yet.
How precise do you have to be on that jam chuck, making it made up like that?
You want to be reasonably good. If you go a little bit over, you can put a piece of paper towel in there, and that'll usually take care of things. But you know, you don't want an eighth of an inch over or anything like that. That's when you start to wish you had done something else. Close. Very close. I'm trying to avoid showing you how a paper towel works. Because I don't think we have one in.
Yeah, we got some right here.
Okay, well, I may need it. Still not quite there.
So are you going for a bevel in there?
No. Just something to keep it from shifting side to side.
Right.
You could bevel it out a little bit, I guess. I mean, it's going to be held in place by the tail center, so
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, that is not quite. It is maybe a 64th movement in there, but it will certainly do. We don't.
Two cells.
It's much too close to need a paper towel. That's the main thing. And not, like I said, and not that a paper towel, using a paper towel doesn't make you a goon or anything. But, where did I put it?
You could use some of Les's hot melt glue.
Yeah. Only if your stove's on.
Yeah.
Only where she's so hot. They're cooking out the rest of it.
That was a very frustrating experience. It was like, I really am stupid.
Hot glue, heat, hot glue. Who'd have thought?
Tighten that to you or something, Craig.
Just one more turn.
Okay, so we are now, we had photo 11 there, and we're now at photo 12, which I'm sure you're glad to be at the end. But, and again, I apologize, because if I had the calipers with me, this probably would have saved us 5 minutes or so. Anyway, I hope you had fun. Okay, so we're just going to get rid of this. All I'm doing is just bringing this down to a cone point, at which point we'll end up breaking it off. But I want to keep it here for a while because there's one more thing that I think is kind of cute to do. And It's not pictured, but it's mentioned in the text.
If at this point, would you start sanding on it?
Sir?
Would you start sanding on it at this point now, before you cut that off?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have done my sanding, on pretty much all this except for the bottom. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it, John, thank you.
Is that dark line on there, the blue line?
Yeah, that's one thing that, epoxy doesn't tend to show up, so don't worry. We have an answer for that.
Texture tools do wonders.
That texture tool would work, yeah. What I do, you'll notice on one, wherever it is, that there are, I think, 3 rings or something scribed on the bottom. And you do one of these rings right on the blue line, another one inside the blue line, another one outside the blue line, there you're going to have it. Amaze your friends and confuse your enemies. So we'll go now and for cutting off on things like this, you can do it with a skew or a detail gouge. And I think I prefer a detail gouge because the only skew I have is like 3/4 of 7/8 of an inch, and this fits in tighter spaces. But they both work equally well. And you want to slow down, of course. Going too fast. The bad part about a detail gouge is they tend to be more catchy than other gouges.
Could you use a parting tool there, Kip?
It would be tough. I should have, maybe I missed, no, I should have ditched this a little more than I did, but the bottom. One of the thin parting tools would probably be useful. Okay. Now, you don't, the technique is here, hollow from the bottom and disguise what you did, which is Betty Scarpino's first principle of design, try to make it look like you meant to do what you just did. And you don't have to have a bell mouth like I did on this. And you can have just a dome or maybe just a little upsweep with a small hole in it. You can leave it solid and cut a hole in the side, or a couple of holes of slightly different sizes and then carve out in between and have kind of like a slot showing there. The first time I ever won first place in a show, I had a dyed ash piece that was done that way. It's completely flat on the top, had a stainless steel bearing stuck on there for decoration, and a slot in it. People thought it was a bank. And the official name of the piece was Hollow Black Thing, but it became known in the Houston club that I was in at the time as Not a Bank, damn it. I'll be happy to endeavor to answer any questions. And I want to thank you for your attention.